October 16, 2015. Elizabeth Holmes sits under studio lights at CNBC, black turtleneck pressed voice dropped to baritone, and tells Jim Cramer that the Wall Street Journal is lying. The investigation published yesterday, John Carreyrou's byline, front page, claims her blood testing devices don't work, claims Theranos runs most tests on competitors' machines, not the revolutionary Edison technology she spent 12 years promising. Holmes leans into the camera. This is what happens when you work to change things. First they think you're crazy, then they fight you. At that exact moment in 40 Walgreens stores across Arizona and California, patients are having blood drawn. Cancer screenings, HIV panels, pregnancy tests, all from Theranos wellness centers, all using technology that, according to the Wall Street Journal, produces dangerously inaccurate results. Holmes doesn't blink. The deep voice she's trained herself to use, performed constantly for years to be taken seriously, holds steady under Cramer's questions. She's betting everything on this performance, betting that her word, her board, her $9 billion valuation carry more weight than one journalist's investigation. She doesn't know yet that the whistleblowers who spoke to Carreyrou have documentation. Internal emails, proficiency testing failures, quality control disasters she ordered buried. She doesn't know the fraud is about to collapse in real time. But here's the impossible part. Walgreens had invested $140 million in this partnership, launched Theranos wellness centers in over 40 stores. They had every financial incentive to validate the technology before patient lives were at stake, before a single blood draw happened. They didn't. The board included Henry Kissinger, James Mattis, George Shultz, William Perry, former secretaries of state and defense, men who shaped Cold War policy, commanded military operations, negotiated with superpowers. Not one medical expert, not one laboratory scientist, not one person qualified to ask basic questions about blood testing technology. Holmes had raised over $700 million from investors. Rupert Murdoch put in $125 million. The Betsy DeVos family invested $100 million. Sophisticated capital, institutional money, the kind that demands due diligence, independent validation, proof of concept. None of them verified the core claim. None of them asked to see the Edison device run 200 tests on a single drop of blood. None of them demanded results from independent laboratories. CMS inspectors, FDA regulators, laboratory accreditation bodies, an entire infrastructure designed to catch exactly this kind of fraud before patients are harmed, before inaccurate cancer markers change treatment decisions, before false HIV results destroy lives. And Elizabeth Holmes herself, no medical training beyond Stanford freshman year, no laboratory expertise, no scientific credentials. A 19-year-old dropout who convinced an entire industry she'd solved what PhD researchers said was impossible. How did none of these safeguards work? How did Elizabeth Holmes take $140 million from Walgreens, endanger patients in 40 stores, and sustain a $9 billion fraud for 12 years? That's exactly what we're going to find out. Elizabeth Anne Holmes was 19 when she founded Theranos in 2003. Stanford dropout from a wealthy, politically connected family. Her father worked at Enron, a detail that would later become darkly prophetic, and USAID. The Enron connection was family shame, the thing they didn't discuss at dinner parties. But Holmes had a different vision for herself. She was obsessed with Steve Jobs, adopted the black turtleneck uniform, studied his product launches, his stage presence, his reality distortion field. She wanted to be the next visionary dropout who changed the world. She had no technical background, freshman year chemistry and engineering courses, nothing more. But she wrote in her early notes, "What if we could test for everything with just a drop of blood?" Not, "How could we?" What if we could? The question assumed the answer, assumed the technology would bend to match her vision. She raised $5.8 million in Series A funding in 2004. The prototypes didn't work. Raised $9.1 million in 2005. Still, no functional device. By 2010, she'd closed a $92 million Series B round. The Edison device still couldn't reliably run the tests she'd promised. Former employees later recalled her response to failed experiments, to tests that produced wildly inaccurate results, to scientists explaining the fundamental problems with finger prick blood samples. She would say, "We're going to change the world. We just need to believe harder, not fix the science, not acknowledge the limitations, believe harder." Holmes started speaking in an artificially deepened voice, trained herself to hold it constantly, baritone instead of her natural register. She thought it made her sound authoritative, serious, like someone who'd revolutionize healthcare. What she was doing, what nobody recognized yet, was performing a role, constructing the person she needed to be for the fraud to work. The Edison device couldn't do what Holmes promised. It could reliably run 12 tests, not 200. It needed 50 to 100 microliters of blood, not a single drop. So she made a decision, run the tests on someone else's machines. Theranos bought Siemens ADVI devices, commercial blood analyzers. The same machines every hospital uses, standard technology, nothing revolutionary. Holmes had them modified. Finger prick samples were diluted to make them work, on equipment designed for venous blood draws. The dilution introduced massive error rates. PSA tests off by 10 times the actual value. Antibody tests giving false negatives for autoimmune diseases. Vitamin D readings so wrong patients changed medications based on fantasy numbers. Then she falsified the validation reports, created fake data for Walgreens executives, built elaborate lab showrooms in Palo Alto with rows of Edison devices gleaming under perfect lighting. Only 2 or 3 were functional props. The rest were empty shells, theater sets. When investors visited, they saw the same stage. When Walgreens executives toured, they saw machines that looked like the future. Nobody asked to watch a live test. Nobody demanded to see proficiency testing results from independent laboratories. Holmes personally pitched the Walgreens partnership. She controlled what information they could access, what data they could review. As CEO, she had complete authority over investor communications, partnership negotiations, laboratory operations. In 2013, Theranos Wellness Centers opened in over 40 Walgreens stores. The fraud went operational. Patient-facing, people walking into pharmacies in Arizona and California, rolling up their sleeves, getting blood drawn for tests that would produce results from machines Theranos claimed didn't exist in their labs. Now watch the money accumulate. Walgreens, $140 million invested. Safeway, $350 million spent remodeling stores for Theranos centers that never fully launched. Rupert Murdoch, $125 million. Betsy DeVos family, $100 million. Meanwhile, in those 40 Walgreens stores, patients are getting results for cancer markers, HIV status, pregnancy, anticoagulation levels, all from devices that don't work. Less than 15% of tests actually used Edison technology. The rest ran on Siemens machines in the back room, and the results were dangerously wrong. Lab director Kingshuk Das raises alarms about accuracy problems. Holmes dismisses him. Lab director Adam Rosendorf starts documenting dangerous inaccuracies in patient results. He's pressured to stay quiet, threatened with litigation if he speaks to regulators. Tyler Schultz, grandson of board member George Schultz, former Secretary of State, works in the lab. He sees the proficiency testing failures, the quality control disasters. He goes to his grandfather, shows him the documentation. Elizabeth Holmes tells Tyler, "I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this a lot longer than you have." She looks him in the eye and dismisses everything he's showing her. George Schultz, Reagan's trusted advisor, the man who negotiated with Gorbachev, sides with Holmes, stops speaking to his grandson. The family fractures over who to believe: the Secretary of State or the lab technician, the visionary CEO or the whistleblower. July 2015. CMS Inspector Alan Beam conducts a surprise inspection at the Theranos lab in Newark, California. What he finds gets classified as immediate jeopardy to patient health and safety, the most serious deficiency category in laboratory regulation, the kind that triggers emergency shutdown protocols. Holmes receives the report. Her response isn't to fix the problems. It's to control the narrative. She emails a lab director raising concerns. "We will not have any problems. I'm in this to build a valuable company. I'm not in this to be average." But the text messages tell a different story. Ramesh Balwani, her partner, Theranos COO, sends her quality control data. Test results so inaccurate they can't be released to patients. His message: "We can't give patients results like this." Holmes texts back: "We have to. We need to show revenue. Not, we need to fix the technology. Not, we need to shut down until this works. We need to show revenue." Meanwhile, she's giving access to journalists. Roger Parloff from Fortune gets a full tour. Lab demonstrations, interviews with Holmes, the resulting cover story, "This CEO is out for blood," becomes part of the credibility architecture, creates a paper trail Fortune will later have to retract. She's using the famous board members as shields. Kissinger and Mattis don't understand blood testing technology, but their names on the letterhead make due diligence feel unnecessary. Who would question a company with that kind of oversight? What nobody at Walgreens knows yet: they were given theatrical performances instead of validation data. What the patients don't know: their test results are being generated by the exact commercial machines Theranos claimed to have made obsolete. The Edison devices humming in the wellness centers are props. The revolution is stagecraft. October 15th, 2015. Wall Street Journal. John Carreyrou's byline: "Hot startup, Theranos has struggled with its blood test technology." Tyler Schultz and Erica Chiam, former employees Holmes had threatened with lawsuits, buried under NDAs, tried to silence with legal fees their families couldn't afford, had secretly met with Carreyrou. Provided documentation, internal emails showing Holmes knew the devices didn't work, proficiency testing failures concealed from regulators. Patient test results compared to actual lab values, the gap between what Theranos claimed and what the technology could actually do. The article lands. Holmes's response: go on Mad Money the next day. Deny everything. Perform the deep voice, the black turtleneck, the unblinking eye contact. Tell Jim Cramer that the journal is lying, that this is what happens when you try to change things. But at Walgreens headquarters in Deerfield, Illinois, executives are reading the same article, sitting in conference rooms, staring at screens, remembering the lab tours they'd been given, the validation data Holmes presented. The Edison devices in rows, theater, all of it. And at that exact moment, while Holmes is on camera denying everything, while Walgreens executives are realizing the scale of deception, patients in 40 stores are having blood drawn, cancer screenings, pregnancy tests, HIV panels. The Edison devices humming. The Edison devices humming. Except they're not Edison devices doing the work. They're Siemens machines in the back room. Commercial analyzers running diluted samples, producing results that are wrong. The article lands. Holmes denies. Walgreens realizes. Patients bleed. Results lie. Here's Holmes's catastrophic OPSEC failure. In 2013 and 2014, she allowed a Theranos contractor to work on validation studies. Standard procedure. The contractor documented that Edison devices had precision and accuracy problems, that they couldn't pass basic proficiency testing, that the core technology didn't work. Instead of destroying this documentation, it was filed in company records. Standard corporate procedure. When litigation started, when federal prosecutors came with subpoenas, this became Exhibit A. The contractor's notes, the failed validation studies, everything. Worse, Holmes used her Apple iPhone for sensitive communications with Balwani. Text messages about knowing the tests didn't work, about needing to show revenue despite quality control failures, about patient safety taking second place to business metrics, all backed up, all subpoenaed, including deleted messages. The iPhone kept everything. She'd built a $9 billion fraud on belief and performance, but she'd left a paper trail, digital artifacts, documentation that couldn't be explained away with charisma or a prestigious board. The backup exists. The emails survive. The validation failures are in writing. It's over. Now here's the cruelest twist. George Shultz, former Secretary of State, the man who sat across from Soviet leadership, chose Elizabeth Holmes over his own grandson. Tyler told him the tests didn't work, showed him the data, the proficiency testing failures, the quality control disasters. George sided with Holmes, stopped speaking to Tyler. The family fractured. Tyler's parents spent over $400,000 on legal fees defending him against Theranos lawsuits. Holmes used investor money to bury the whistleblower under litigation, to punish the person telling the truth. That's what happened to people who raised alarms. Meanwhile, Holmes kept repeating her maxim, the line she told employees, investors, media. You can't fake forever. She said it as inspiration, a reminder to build real technology eventually, to believe until the science caught up with the vision. It became her epitaph. She idolized Steve Jobs, believed she was the visionary dropout who'd changed the world. The deep voice she affected to be taken seriously, performed constantly for years, held through meetings and interviews, and congressional testimony became evidence of willful deception at trial, proof she was constructing a persona, playing a role. Her father worked at Enron. The family shame. The scandal they never discussed. It became the parallel nobody could ignore, the generational echo of corporate fraud. And the patients, people who received inaccurate results for HIV, pregnancy, cancer markers, PSA levels off by 10 times actual values, vitamin D readings causing medication changes based on numbers that were fantasy. Some changed treatments based on wrong data. Some missed diagnoses. The Theranos patient database still exists somewhere in seized records and legal archives. Most patients still don't know their results were wrong. The real health consequences, unmeasured, untracked, unknown. November 2022. U.S. District Court, Northern District of California. Case number 5. 18 Cur 00258. Elizabeth Holmes, sentenced to 11 years and 3 months in federal prison for wire fraud. From $4.5 billion net worth on paper to zero. She'd married hotel heir Billy Evans during the trial, had 2 children while facing prison. Her parents mortgaged their home for legal fees. The family that built wealth on connections and prestige lost everything defending the fraud. She began serving her sentence in May 2023 at FPC, Bryan, Texas, while pregnant with her second child. Ramesh Balwani received 13 years. Theranos dissolved in September 2018. Walgreens terminated the partnership in June 2016. Sued for the $140 million, settled confidentially. Safeway lost $350 million in store remodel investments. Money spent building infrastructure for technology that never worked. Holmes is banned from serving as an officer or director of any public company. The board that was supposed to protect patients had former secretaries of state and defense, and not a single medical expert. They were there to be impressive, not to ask questions. That's not oversight. That's set design.